experiment is the best way to study cause and effect. So there will be one experimental group and one control group, typically. And the researcher will manipulate the experimental group, have some kind of treatment or something like that, and then the control group will not manipulate at all. And that way we can see if what we're doing in the experimental group somehow influences the outcome. The experimental group receives a treatment that's manipulated by the researcher. So the researcher is doing something to the participants in this group. In the control group, the researcher is not doing any manipulation. This is kind of a way to eliminate possible confounds from our experiment, like the placebo effect. The independent variable is the one being manipulated by the experimenter. So, for example, if we're doing a study on the effectiveness of different antipsychotic medications for schizophrenic patients, the independent variable would be the type of medication. So there might be different groups within that. There might be two different types of medication and a controlled medication. The dependent variable is our outcome variable. So this is the one that we're measuring what happens as a result of the experiment. So if we're doing a study on different types of antipsychotic medication for schizophrenic patients, the outcome variable might be number of bizarre delusions in a day. And that would be what we'd measure, and we'd hope to decrease if our medication was working correctly. Descriptive statistics are used as a way of describing our data. So, for example, if we're interested in IQ scores, we'll look at the mean IQ score, the average. We'll look at how much variability there is in IQ scores. So, it's basically just a way to describe the data. So, the measures of central tendency will be mean, median, mode. Measures of variability will be things like the variance, the standard deviation, the spread, things like that. Inferential statistics are a way for a researcher to infer conclusions from their data. So, for example, if we're interested in IQ scores, we might ask, is there a relationship between race and IQ score? What about gender and IQ score? We'll learn about that a little bit more later in the semester with actual IQ data. The strength of a correlation is measured by its value, not by whether it's positive or negative. So correlations close to -1 or 1 are very strong correlations, whereas correlations close to 0 are weak. A positive correlation is above 0 and all the way up to 1. So basically what's happening with the positive correlation is that as one variable goes up, the other one goes up as well. So for example, amount of time studying and test scores. The more time you study, the higher your score. A negative correlation ranges from anything below 0 all the way down to -1. So basically what's going on here is, as one variable goes up, the other goes down. So for example, amount of time spent partying and test scores. The more time you spend partying, the lower your test score.